of you know me, I am Dallas Eggers. I am the president, but what I really am here is the chief storyteller. And if you know me, you know that's true. And I have been very fortunate. We're going to wait a couple minutes. I think we might have 2 more people coming in. We got a couple of chairs here. But a couple things about our rooms. I have 15 people who have helped us. And this is our 3rd major presentation in 3 years. And our goals are being, our goals, well, yeah. I can't help the motorcycle to lead. Yeah. I can't help the motorcycle, that's what they are. But we've been really trying to get better, and I think we are. Our presentation is better. People trust us now. The research has worked out, and people continue to bring us things. And every week I have more things coming in. And so for us, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun. So thank you for coming. But first of all, I need to tell you who does some of this thing. Errol Morella, Trish Foreman, Tracy Franick, Elise Block, Mary Pat House, Linda Bjorklund, Tom Blank, Tim Hall, Chris Baltasak, Jessica London, Susan Metcalf, Tom and Kathy Oss, Joe Glavitz, McCoulter Eaton, helped us with the heavy stuff. So that are the people who make all of this happen. We've been pretty consistent with being open every weekend for almost 3 years. So if you have things that are your family history, bring them to us. We'll scan them, we'll protect them. There are a couple chairs up here, but it looks like we're okay. Next, these shows are put on by grants. We've received grants first from Robert and Alice Merker. Bob was a Homer of grand eloquence. He worked at the library. He was a pilot on the river. He was a mechanic on the river. And he was a true lover of the city. And so the Merker family has been a great help in putting this on. The next grant that we got came from the J. Mack Gamble Foundation, which is a steamboat and river history preservation group on the Ohio River. If you do not have one of our booklets in the side over there, J. Mack Gamble paid for us to print those and give them out for free. Most of the things in the booklet are true, but if you know river pilots, the fish was this big on Monday and he was this big on Friday. So, and last of all, a major grant from the family of Deanna and Ken Rowan. Their family had made a large request to us. Ken would be proud of what we're doing. He would have been smiling from ear to ear to see you here today. So can't thank you enough. Now this is what I always forget. Make sure you sign our guest book. It's sitting in the back of the room. That helps us with tourism Wisconsin and that type of thing. So, and you can sign twice and use somebody else's name if you choose. And also, we're always looking for members. We have little jobs, we have things to do. It could be filing jobs, it could be scanning jobs, it could be as glorious as cleaning. But we always need help. So if you're interested, come and see us. Check out our Facebook page. We try and keep it up fairly frequently, a couple times a week. And so tonight, I shouldn't say tonight, I've been doing Friday nights for 3 in a row. Today, we have 2 of my old colleagues that are teachers from Prescott, Wisconsin. And Kelly and her husband traveled for decades on the rivers, literally decades. And Jean has been the graphics person and this type of thing for a long time. Well, when you went in her classroom, you knew that. And so I couldn't be happier to have them here this morning and present the new children's book, Grandma and Grandpa's Great Loop Adventure. So, ladies, it's yours.
Well, welcome. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate all this great support. So my name is Kelly Johnson. I'm the author of Grandma and Grandpa's Great Loop Adventure.
And my name is Jean Halverson. And I created the pictures in Kelly's wonderful book. I've lived in Prescott for 32 years. I retired 10 years ago as a 2nd grade teacher at Malone Elementary. Coming to the History Center today brings back a lot of great memories. As Deb would remember, we taught a unit on Prescott history, and we would come here to visit and learn about the growth, the Mississippi rivers, the St. Croix River, and so this place is pretty dear to my heart. We learned about the rivers and the importance of how it helped Prescott grow, and how the industry and transportation and entertainment were very instrumental in the growth because of the river. You are in for a treat today as you learn about the Great Loop and from Kelly and what includes the Mississippi River.
Well, I too am a retired school teacher, having taught 18 of my 23 years right here in Prescott. And I'm also a Prescott resident and have been for 33 years. And because of my husband, I am a boater. I first met my husband Dave in 1987, and he had just sold all his worldly possessions to buy a 1965 38-foot all-wooden Chris Craft aft cabin cruiser. Well, the plan was, I'm going to live on a boat and be a bachelor. And then 2 months later, he met me. Well, I grew up camping, so the transition to boating was easy. I learned so much about the local rivers from Dave as he grew up on the rivers, boating most of the Mississippi and the St. Croix since he was an infant, literally in an infant seat in their boat. We made a great team, Captain Dave and First Mate Kelly. Well, fast forward to the spring of 1994, 2 months after our second daughter was born, we upgraded to a dream boat, a fiberglass 1975 44 flush deck Trojan aft cabin cruiser. We spent 16 glorious years cruising many waterways around the area, including frequent trips to La Crosse and Prairie du Chien, and we even made it down to Dubuque, Iowa. However, Dave's big bucket list was to cruise his boat to the Gulf of Mexico. Well, the right deal for an ocean-going vessel presented itself in the spring of 2012. So after purchasing the 52-foot Jefferson Pilot House, our beyond dream boat, we flew out to Annapolis, Maryland, and spent 6 weeks cruising our home to Prescott, Wisconsin. Dave then prepared the boat to his standards, and after an early retirement for me, Labor Day weekend 2017, we cruised our boat to Fort Myers, Florida, and by doing that, Dave was able to complete his dream of cruising to the Gulf. Well, that was quite the adventure. And when you combine those two large boat adventures we took, you get about 80% of an incredible adventure, which you just saw, but we'll take a look right here. And it's called America's Great Loop. And today we'd like to take you on that adventure as we focus on the rivers and canals and their history. And the best way to begin is to share page 1 of our book.
Yay! It's a party! I love a party, don't you? Hi, my name is Sandy, and I would love for you to join me in all this fun. You see, this party is for my grandma, who I call Mimi, and grandpa, who I call Papa, as my family and I say goodbye and good luck. Mimi and Papa are leaving on their boat named J&J Adventure to take a journey of a lifetime called the Great Loop. The Great Loop is a boating route where Mimi and Papa will be able to cruise different waterways around eastern North America. The best part is that Mimi and Papa will be sending me letters to tell me all about the adventures. Papa will captain the boat, and Mimi takes a lot of notes and pictures. I am so excited to be a part of their journey, and I am glad you will be joining me.
So as you heard granddaughter Sandy explain, the Great Loop is basically an adventure of a lifetime, where people can navigate their boat through 6,000 miles of waterways that surround the eastern United States and portions of Canada. And people who cruise the Great Loop are called loopers. And you can see right here, this is our first night meeting loopers, and we're all getting organized there. We're just coming in and we're gonna anchor tying up to this boat right here for the first time. We had a great evening, and we're still good friends today. So anyway, so the route includes the Great Lakes, inland rivers, the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway, New York State canals, and the Canadian canals. And if you take a look, you can see it outlined here. Sometimes there's some different variations that people can do, but this is kind of the main route that most people will take. And the route typically takes you 1 year to complete. And in summer, the loopers begin in the north, and they travel in a counterclockwise direction because they want to go with the current of the inland rivers. And the idea is to get down to Florida by the time it's really beginning to cool down in the north. Loopers fly burgees, and this actually is our burgee right here, a little weathered and torn. And you can see that one right here. And they fly those so that they recognize one another. And then they'll often congregate after a day of cruising to have some ducktails. Cheers! That is a refreshing drink on the dock while sharing stories of their cruise so far. Now you would fly a white burgee if you're in the process of doing the loop. So that's what Dave and I would fly. Now if you completed the loop, you would fly a gold burgee. And yes, people do it more than one time. So if you've done it more, then you would have a platinum. It's not a dirty one, it's a platinum. Now, while cruising the Great Loop sounds like so much fun to many, it is an adventurous undertaking. So thankfully, there's a group to support loopers. America's Great Loop Cruising Association was first created in 1999. And it actually wasn't created for looper support at that time. It was really created so that Ron and Ava Staub could sell the book that they wrote based on their Great Loop travel called Honey, Let's Get a Boat. Well, 20 boats and 70 members showed up to that first rendezvous, and now years later, under different ownership, America's Great Loop Cruising Association has grown to 6,000 plus members and over 150 sponsors. Now, while thousands of boaters complete portions of the Great Loop each year, only an approximate 150 actually complete the entire loop. The Mississippi and Illinois rivers are considered the most challenging portions of the Great Loop. And one of the challenges for a lot of those people is this, the lock and dams. Well, knowing that the river cruising can have strong currents for boaters, that would kind of trigger a lot of those people that were from the Great Lakes or from the East Coast. They get kind of nervous about the currents on the river and staying between the buoys and that kind of thing. So thankfully, between 1930 and 1940, locks and dams were created on the upper Mississippi River, allowing for easier movement of boats hauling freight, as they created a 9-foot navigation channel. Wing dams were also made. They're man-made barriers that extend partway into a river, and they were also built to stabilize that channel. Now, it's very important that boaters stay between the navigational beacons, that is those red and green buoys you see out on the river, kind of makes like a street on the river. They don't want to boat over a wing dam, cause much destruction to a boat. So when you're returning upstream, you must remember
Red, right, returning.
that is red buoys on the right when you're returning upstream. Now, another challenge that loopers would find is passing these guys. Passing towboats with barges is part of another challenge. And because of the combined inflows of the Missouri, Ohio, and other rivers to the Mississippi south of St. Louis, there's no longer need for locks and dams, because the combined flow of all those rivers creates a deep enough and wide enough channel that can accommodate the tows and their large number of barges. They all navigate the Mississippi. Also, because there are no longer locks and dams, the amount of barges a tow will push increases significantly from the typical 15 we see around here to 30 or even 40.
So, if 15 barges are pushed by a towboat, that is about the length of 3 football fields. So 30 barges would be about 6 football fields. I can't even imagine a towboat pushing 40 barges. I love watching the barges going up and down the Mississippi River. I've gained a whole new respect for the towboat pilots, their responsibilities, and challenges when traveling the rivers. Hey, Ken, catch. Just kidding.
Now, since Dave and I were riverboaters, passing towboats with a large number of barges wasn't much of a challenge for us. Yet, if I think back, the Illinois River, yeah, that provided much excitement with the flying carp. Yeah, those guys. Oh my gosh.
Well, Kelly and I shared this exciting part of her trip through letter 1 of our book. A bit too far.
You talk and I'll put it.
All right. Let me tell you a few things about the illustrations that you are going to want to look for. When I was working on letter 1, I wanted to use materials that would give a 3D effect. So I went to my teacher's closet and I found some chicken wire, some little rocks, and silver straws. Yes, I save a lot of junk. Treasures to me. I use that wire to create the barrier that stops the cart from traveling downstream. The straws and the rocks became a part of the danger sign shown in the book. And look for Sandy as she gets excited about the chance of a carp landing on her as she is in her tubing.
Dear Sandy, Papa and I have spent the last 4 days cruising the Illinois River, and what an interesting cruise it has been. Not long after leaving our spectacular Bon Voyage party in Chicago, we happened upon an electric fish barrier sign. We weren't sure what this was until the Coast Guard boat pulled up next to us. They explained that the electric fish barrier is an underwater device which was created to keep the Asian carp out of the Great Lakes of North America. We learned that Asian carp are not native fish and can cause serious damage by competing for other fish's food and space. Hey, did I mention these fish can fly? Well, more like jump. Well, we were told that these fish can be easily frightened. And when that happens, the Asian carp are known to jump as high as 10 feet out of the water. So about 20 miles after we passed through the electric fish barrier, we had Asian carp jumping all around their boat. I think our engines were frightening them. Believe it or not, one actually landed on the back deck of our boat. Could you imagine the damage this fish could do if you were tubing like we do back home?
A little later that afternoon, I saw 2 people in a fishing boat trying a retractable bow and arrow to catch one of these flying fish. I thought this was so strange, but when they stopped at a marina for the night, the marina manager told us that people on the Illinois River have gotten very creative to try to get rid of these fish. He went on to tell Papa and me that in one town, there is something called the Redneck Fishing Tournament. Oh, the winner is the group of people with the most Asian carp. in their boat at the end of 3-hour contest. 1 year, 78 boats brought in 1,840 fish. The only equipment the competition allows are handheld nets that can be dipped into the water to retrieve the fish. But Sandy, get this, different types of protective gear, such as football helmets, baseball bats, and rain gear for slime are optional. Can you imagine this slime? Yuck! What an adventure we have had so far. Papa and I can't wait to see what's in store for us once we begin the cruise the next river, the mighty Mississippi. Love, Mimi.
Well, as we continued cruising south on the Mississippi, Dave and I, like most all loopers, took a left on the Ohio River. Again, because there are no more locks and dams south of St. Louis, the Mississippi becomes very windy, as well as industrialized with those large number of barges. It's quite not as boater friendly as a pleasure boater might like. So when Dave and I were cruising that part of the Great Loop in 2017, the Ohio River, as you can see here, was undergoing quite the transformation. A new lock was being built to replace the two that we ventured through. Locks and dams 52 and 53 on the Ohio were originally built in 1929. And they were to be replaced in 1998. But as most things go, construction took a bit longer. And the Olmsted Locks and Dam opened in 2020. Therefore eliminating the old wicket dams. Yep, you heard me right, wicket dams. Here's a picture of what it would look like. The wicket dams of the Ohio River were constructed of very heavy timber, about 4 feet long, 20 feet wide. I'm sorry, 4 feet wide, 20 feet long. At one time, the wickets would be raised or lowered by a crew on a maneuver boat that would move along the upstream face of the dam. And get this, at high water levels, when the dam wasn't needed, boats would simply cruise right over the dam. As we entered Lock 53, this is how it looked. That's the lock wall. Not exactly sure what that lock wall was made out of, but I'll tell you what, it seemed as though it was coated with about 2 inches of dried mud from previous floods. Yep. In this next picture, you can see the wicket dam there, but now you can even see it a little bit better, well, on the other side, yeah. So once we're in the lock of 53, being the first mate, I handed the lockmaster a line in which he wrapped around a bollard and returned to me. A little different than how the local locks operate here. Well, a little later that day, as we approached the next lock, which would be 52, we found out that the lock was under repair. Hence why the need for that new lock, right? Since it was getting so late in the day though, we had to find a safe spot to anchor near the shoreline. Well, the next morning, we called the lockmaster and to find out that, yep, the lock was up and running, all right. But there were 3 towboats ahead of us. So again, we waited. And while waiting our turn, we heard a tow captain call the lockmaster. And he said, now I know you take groups of 6 tows at a time, and I think I'm the 5th group, but what number am I exactly? To which the lockmaster replied, 33. The tow captain responded, woo-wee! And Dave and I remember looking at each other saying, 33? Are you kidding me, 33? No wonder there were towboats everywhere we looked. I later learned that locks and dams in that area helped around 90 million tons of cargo pass through every year. Well, after a 4-hour wait, it was our turn to lock through. And as we were leaving the lock, this is what we saw. This is how old and fragile the gates were. They opened only one at a time, and each one was opened very slowly. Now for those boats that were powered by gas engines doing the loop, this stretch of the trip was concerning, as would that boat have enough gas to get to the marina? Oftentimes you would see some of these boats with extra gas cans on the back of their back deck there. The two marinas that were here, they were stretched out so far, so the people were real quite concerned about that. But thankfully, this happened. A new marina with a fuel spot opened in Paducah, Kentucky. And in fact, we were one of the first boats to stay on that new state-of-the-art dock. It consisted of 50 foot above the water spud poles, each one about 30 inches in diameter. And of course, there was robust hardware railings. Now, like we did on the loop, we'd go into town to either stock up or something like that. And so as we're walking up to town, I noticed this huge levee wall. This is a huge wall here. And the town's about 35 feet already above the Ohio River. And that wall adds an additional 15 feet of protection. Believe it or not, water has risen within 2 feet of the top of that wall in recent years. Hence why that robust dock system. And did I mention we were one of the first ones on the dock, that new dock? Well, we realized we were when we came back and the local TV crew was there to interview us. We got our 5 minutes of fame when loopers recognized us for the next day. Well, as we continued our travels, we cruised the Tennessee River and Kentucky Lake, which is part of the Tennessee River, which then led us to the Tennessee Tom Bigby Waterway. The building of this waterway in the late 70s and 80s actually made a navigable channel connecting the Tennessee River to the Gulf of Mexico, which made cruising the Great Loop much more pleasurable, instead of cruising that industrialized lower Mississippi. Listen as Jean explains a little bit about this waterway by reading letter 6.
Hi, Sandy. After exiting Kentucky Lake and staying by a nearby marina for the night, Papa and I realized that we are definitely in the southern part of the United States now. You see, Papa and I took a bike ride to get some exercise. And we saw a sign that told us we were just 5 miles from the border of the state of Mississippi. The southern border of this state is the Gulf of Mexico, or Mississippi. The southern border of this state is the Gulf of Mexico. Sorry about that. Talking to the marina manager, we learned that we were close to a Civil War battlefield that was used when the northern and the southern United States went to war with each other in the late 1800s. Papa and I were fortunate enough to visit the Great Shiloh battlefield and learn so much about this important time in our American history. Now in this picture, you can see up here, it took 6 horses to pull this cannon, and that is Papa in the book, but it was a picture of Dave standing by the cannon. And then Kelly had a lot of wonderful book pages in her, pictures in her blog. So we had to figure out how we were going to put Papa in the pictures. So cut and paste, got it done. After our visit, we had lunch at a local restaurant where Papa and I enjoyed a fish fry with a popular side dish, hush puppies. The story of how the fried cornmeal treat came to be was told to us by our waitress. She said that when fishermen would clean the catfish after fishing, the dogs would stand around barking at them. So the fishermen would fry some extra cornmeal, give it to the dogs, and say, hush, puppies. Your Papa and I got a good laugh from this story while we enjoyed the southern treat. And in the book, or in the on this page, you can see these are the hush puppies, which look kind of like tater tots. And then this beautiful dog right here is Kelly's grand dog, Harper. She had to be in the book. I think I'm shaking, so I hit it and it goes twice. All right, so check out this photo. Your papa is quite the navigator as he cruises our boat so very close to this towboat. It was such a tight squeeze. It's the picture right up there. It was such a tight squeeze when we were on the first part of the Tennessee Tom Bigby waterway called the Divide Cut. The 10 Tom, as it is called, is made up of 3 sections. The Divide Cut, Canal section, and River. While cruising this beautiful but quiet waterway, we saw some fabulous moss-covered oak trees, white cliffs, a wild boar, and even our first alligator. Next up, the Gulf of Mexico. Love Mimi.
So as we continued our cruise on America's Great Loop, we encountered waterways other than rivers. Like she just said, we came out to Mobile Bay, then into the Gulf of Mexico, and you can kind of see how the crossing happens here for the Gulf. There's 2 different ways you can follow the land, but you have to do it overnight, quite long route, and it's very, very skinny in depth. So most people do it in a day and they go out onto the waters. And then you cruise around Florida, and you come out to as you're cruising down, that's the Intercoastal Waterway, and as you come around, then you're out onto the Atlantic Ocean. But once we get to the state of New York, we take a left on the Hudson River, where we encounter many large waves due to all the New York ferries. However, very shortly after we got out of the city limits, the Hudson became very peaceful.
So let me share how this letter 14 is described in the book. The landscape surrounding the Hudson River turned quickly from tall buildings surrounded by cement to picturesque mountains. Those mountains are named the Hudson Highlands, which are part of the Appalachian Mountain Range. We cruised the Hudson River for 2 days, enjoying the mountains, as well as many unique lighthouses. Now, when I worked on this letter, I really didn't understand what the Hudson Highland Mountains look like. I first made the mountains look purple. And thanks to Kelly's description of lots of trees, calm waters, and unique lighthouses, I used colored pencils to create the mountains and the water. And then I found a stamp with trees on it. But even better, a stamp pad that had 4 different shades of green. I was like, I am going to have so much fun. And of course, I have to thank Amazon. Kelly always laughs at me, Amazon, right? The lighthouse in the picture is actually in the water. Very, very impressive.
Soon we came to a break in that mountain range and discovered that we were at the starting point of the Erie Canal. Now the Erie Canal has quite a bit of history, as it was built between 1817 and 1825, 200 years ago. And to give you a sense of just how long ago the canal was built, boats had no form of power at that time. So we're talking before steamboats, before engines were invented. So how would the boats get moved along that canal? Get this, it was thanks to mules and horses. So Jean's going to help us to demonstrate this. So we have our lovely Sandy. She's being towed in the boat here by the horse, and the Jean and the horse are on land, and they're pulling the boat through the canal. That's how it used to happen. Did you ever hear of horsepower? Yeah. There you go. Another interesting bit of Erie Canal history is what happened once a boat entered certain locks on the canal. Those locks had a special name called way locks. And the water in those locks would be drained once the boat entered. And the boat would not be sitting on the bottom of the lock. They'd be sitting on the bottom or on top of a scale. And based on how much the boat's cargo weighed, that would be the fee that the captain would have to pay for using the Erie Canal. Well, Dave and I didn't have any mules or horses pulling our boat through the canal, but we did have to buy a 10-day pass to cruise the Erie Canal. Listen to mine and Dave's experience of cruising the beginning of the Erie Canal as I share the last part of letter 14 with you. Our adventure on the Erie Canal began with a flight of locks. I had never heard of that term, so I was excited for what lay ahead of us. As we entered the first lock, we couldn't get over how narrow it was in the lock. There wasn't even enough room for our boat to turn around if need be. Sandy, be sure to check out the picture that shows how tall the lock walls were. Wowza! Papa and I learned that these locks actually weren't the originals that were built in the 1800s. Turns out that since that time, the canal and locks have been enlarged 2 times. Can you imagine how narrow the locks must have been originally then?
So in the pictures here, I found this fascinating. I thought, a flight of what? Locks? Okay. This here is waiting for the first lock on the Erie Canal to open, and then check out the height of those walls, and then they're saying we are in.
Remember how I was wondering what a flight of locks was? Well, it turns out that once we exited the first lock, we could already see the second lock. And it continued that way for all 5 locks. And these locks are known as the Waterford Flight. And we learned that during this flight, boats are lifted the greatest height in the shortest distance of any canal in the world. Seemed like we were riding in a series of elevators. Up, up, up we went. And once we finished the last lock of the Waterford Flight, Papa and I thought, phew, we could relax a little. But let me tell you something, we saw a guard gate. I have to tell you, Sandy, we were a little concerned as how we were going to fit under the gate. It looked so low. Well, looks can be deceiving, as we cruised under it with no problem. Phew. I asked the next lockmaster what the purpose of those gates were, and he told me that if there was an emergency in the canal, such as flooding, the gate would be closed so that the whole canal wouldn't be affected. That sounded like a pretty smart idea to me.
In the pictures here, you will see coming out of the first lock on the Erie Canal, and here's the next one, ready to go. This is the Waterford Flight. Then here's Papa again. This is leaving Lock 6, the last of the Waterford Flight. We've been raised a total of 169 feet in 2 miles.
Wow.
And then this is the guard gate that Kelly mentioned, and I'd be a little nervous going under that too.
Well, once we leave the Erie Canal, we venture into the Great Lakes. Most loopers do 3 of the 5. Sometimes you'll do 4 of the 5. But we ventured into Lake Erie, then into Lake Huron, followed by Lake Michigan, where in our book is where our cruise began.
Ahoy mates, Sandy here. Do you see what I see? Yes, it's Mimi and Papa's J&J adventure, cruising into the inlet of Chicago. Since they are back where they started, they have what loopers call cross their wake. They can now trade in their white burgee for a gold one that shows they have completed the Great Loop. What an adventure! I am so glad that we got to tag along for this incredible journey. Congratulations, Mimi and Papa. We are so proud of you. Time to celebrate, so let's have a party.
Thank you. Again, we're just so thrilled that we could have so many people here today. We do have books for sale in the back there. They're $20 cash, but if you don't have cash, we have cards that have a QR code on them, just like up here. This works too. You can use your camera, and it'll take you right to our website that has a link to go right to where you can purchase the book, and you can use your credit card that way. So we are done with our presentation, but we might have a couple minutes for some questions if anybody has any that they were like, as we were explaining some of the stuff, you're like, what? Wait a minute, what's this? What's that? Does anyone have any questions that we can answer? Or you can Google maybe later. Murray.
What is the part of the trip that you enjoyed the most?
I think that truly going through that Erie Canal with all the history, I do enjoy history, so that was huge. But one of the things that got Dave and I the most was as we turned off the Atlantic Ocean onto the Hudson, we were just as nervous, full of anxiety as could be, because we wanted to make sure we did everything right. And you know, were there going to be helicopters looking for us? How do they know? We just came off the blue abyss. Who are we? You know, and that kind of thing. Our boat was documented, so at the next boat thing that they had in the boat show in Minneapolis that next January, I went up to Homeland Security, and Dave's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I just want to know. And they're like, I explained everything. Like, oh, we knew you were there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But then, I know. So then we were passing by the Statue of Liberty, and you're just like, how can this be? It was just, yeah, I have no words. Yeah, it was just something else. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
I know you said you docked once and went on a bike ride. Did you dock other times?
We actually stayed in marinas most nights. We had a particularly very warm summer when we were bringing it from Annapolis home. So you want to be plugged in, you know, to air conditioning. And then we enjoyed getting off the boat and going to check out all these small towns. These small towns, the river towns are a lot like Prescott, right? So much charm, so much history. Of course, you want to support those towns too. So if we did anchor out, which didn't happen all that often, but some loopers do choose to do it, anchor out more than one time. You know, you can dinghy in. We would go in and we would, you know, either get groceries and things like that, or we just bike in or walk in to have dinner somewhere, just look around the town, or just to stretch our legs and get off the boat, right? And sometimes like Walmart, or if you have to really, you know, stock up on things, it might have been the Walmart might have been further away, and so they might have a courtesy card that you can use from the marina people. So that was really always nice too. So, yeah.
Did you enjoy the cities that you went through on the Erie Canal? Because I grew up in Syracuse.
Oh, did you really? Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm curious because it's a different area.
It's very different, yeah. And again, we were there in 2012, so I'm sure that things have changed even since then. So yeah, it was.
Are you allowed to stop?
Yes, and in fact, you can actually, at times, you can stay the night on some of the locked wall, or not the locked, well, yeah, some of them have a wall like, sometimes, like Red Wing, for example. They have that wall that you can pull up to, and some of them do that, or sometimes the lock wall, after you get out of the lock, there's a wall there, and they'll let you tie up too sometimes, but it just depends. Yeah, right.
Were there any security issues for your crew in the boat?
Right, not really. You know, you heard, because there was so much literature, and Dave researched, and I had the best captain ever. I was so confident with him. He would never put us in danger, but then things happened, right? You know, so we did lock up at night and that. I know, kind of an interesting story. We had hoped to venture to the Bahamas. We went to Bimini real quick, but wanted to go further south. It didn't work out. But we had some friends who actually went way further past the Exumas and that kind of thing. And so they were concerned for safety. And when they'd anchor out, they had a box full of crushed glass. And they put it out on their back deck. So if anybody tried to approach and get on the deck or onto their boat, climb on their boat, they would, you know, step on the glass and that kind of thing. So kind of crazy, which I was telling you, I don't need to go that far. Yeah, so.
Was there a group that you stayed with, not all the time, but you kept re-encountering?
Right. From here all the way down to pretty much the right where the Illinois comes into the Mississippi, we were pretty much on our own. We had met our first loopers actually right before we went to the lock at La Crosse. And it was a 26-foot dory, for those of you that are boaters. And it was a couple, and it was their third time doing the loop. And they actually had decided to go, for their third time, they went up into Lake Superior, and they knew somebody, so they met them in Duluth, and that person then trailered their boat down to wherever they could. I can't remember where they got on, if it was like Stillwater area, or if it was sooner, not Stillwater, where the Mississippi would be further north, if it was like in you know, Minneapolis area, or if it was even a little further north of that area. However, that being said, it was kind of funny because, again, we are very blessed to have this 52-foot, and I kind of like Charnos, I like shoes, and I said, our kids were with us, I said, where do you suppose she puts her shoe bin? A 26-foot boat. A little too close for comfort for me, so. Great questions. Anybody else?
I'm impressed. I'm super impressed.
Oh. Thank you.
How long was the whole trip? I think you maybe said, but.
Yeah, so again, we did 6 weeks. We brought the boat home from Annapolis, Maryland. And again, we were told you should not be on a schedule of any sort when you're doing the Great Loop, because things happen, you know, breakdowns, things like that. We just were fortunate. It was a hot summer. Everything just worked out for us. It was just so lovely. Leaving here in 2017 and going down to Fort Myers then, it took us 77 days. We got down to the Gulf earlier than we thought. We actually crossed the Gulf on Halloween, so we had to leave at 4:30 in the morning, and Dave had already gotten our little breadcrumb trail on the radar screen all figured out the day before. And so we were up in the middle of the night, the moon had already set, and here we go out to the Gulf, and he's all of a sudden saying, okay, we're all in the Gulf, I'm gonna take a nap. I'm like, say what? I'm like, it's pitch black. Just look at the radar screen, and you'll know if you're gonna hit anything. And just watch out, it's your lead.
Oh my God.
And it's Halloween, you know, it's like, so that was a little nerve-wracking and everything, but boy, watching, I thought back to how it must have been in the early years when people were first navigating, right? And I could just see the hints of light coming up above the horizon of the Gulf, and then the sun starting to rise. And he woke up, and then I got to take a nap. And when I woke up, all I could see was clear blue everywhere, blue sky, blue water. It was just incredible. So we got ahead of ourselves. We just had a good time for crossing. The Gulf can, like anything, if you don't have good favorable seas and that, you don't want to cross. And so we had good crossing, so we got going earlier, and so we were ahead of schedule, and our daughter was flying into Tampa to meet us. So we actually spent 10 days there. So we weren't in a rush, but we didn't lollygag either, except for those 10 days there. So yeah.
Your total time was?
Well, most people it's a year, and as a lot of people know in this room, my husband suddenly passed the day we were blowing this book up on Facebook after we had gotten it published and everything, October 2nd of 23. So we had a little bit of that loop. We had gotten as far as like around Fort Lauderdale. We had to get up to Annapolis, Maryland. So we never completed that part. But if you would do it, you know, the whole way. I'll just piggyback off on that really quick. Dave had talked to a gentleman somewhere in one of the southern states there before we got across the Gulf. And this gentleman told them they were 17 years in the loop journey and they weren't done. Because every time their only means of a house was their boat, and every time they got somewhere, they just thought it was fascinating and lovely, and they wanted to stay. So they stayed and stayed and stayed until they were like, okay, let's move on. So I don't know who those people were, but I don't know if they ever finished the loop. I don't know. So it's such an adventure. It's just lovely. And some of the people, I think, getting back to someone's question, was there were 2 other couples and 1 gentleman we've become very close friends with, and we would bump into them again and again. And we have looper reunions, we call. And a lot of people who do get close with some certain loopers along the way, they will have reunions. So every year we do that. We even did the Rhine River cruise in Germany with those people. That's how special that was. So they're adventurous people. Scott.
So is your next trip the Nile or the Amazon?
Yeah, right? I don't know, Mike, what are we doing? Captain Mike here. Croatia. Well, like I said, we have books for sale back there. We appreciate your support. We're giving a few dollars to the History Center to support their efforts from our sales. So if you have 1, you should have 2 or 3, I think. So, thank you so much for coming. This is so fun for Jean and I. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to Kelly for giving me this opportunity. It has been amazing. And I also want to thank Erica Kieser.
Could you stand?
You have been
Please.
a blessing.
Yes.
You just have to help me learn how to not be
I
shaky. when I'm-
I figured out, I'm like, we're gonna see if we can go, just press P to go to the previous slide.
Ladies, fabulous. Absolutely. Thank you for coming. This is our 4th speaker of the summer. Last night we had Robert Taunt, steamboat historian par excellence. Captain Lee Hendricks was here a month ago. Since Lee left us, he's done 2 presentations in St. Louis, Memphis, and Louisville, Kentucky. And in May we had Dr. John Amundsen, who is the preeminent river historian in the nation. Now, in August 8th, you will be stuck with me. And I am going to start back in the steamboat era, and I will bring you up to about into the 1920s. And I've been doing my steamboat show for about 6 years for the University of Minnesota. I never do the same one. And it's very much like Kelly says, when you start on a river adventure, you never know where you're going to go. And so they change continually. So Friday night, August 8th, we'll have another presentation, and we're hoping to continue this next year. So Elise and I and Chris are already trying to figure out who are our presenters for next year. Now, can I ask you for a favor? If you know someone you have seen give a presentation that you would think would fit what we are doing, please let us know. Please let us know, because we're trying to let people know what Prescott has to offer. And by having you here, you make us smile. It makes it worth all the time.
Thank you for
And
coming.
so,
Yeah.
sign our guest book. Thank you very much. Be well and do good things.